Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Underground. So Underground is a 2016 television series about slavery. It takes place in the South and in the North of the United States of America in the year 1857. And it was deeply moving. It deeply saddened me, which, of course it should. It is a drama. It is a good show. Like most modern shows, it had elements that I think should have been left out. There were some parts that were lurid that I think could have been left out. It had content that should have been left out, right? So I would say that was about 5% of the show. Beyond that, the other 95% that was, kind of more for all ages, was excellent, fantastic. So really a brilliant show in many ways. Really quite exceptional. And so I just want to talk about it a little bit. So one of the reasons why frankly, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of historical material done by television or Hollywood. And the reason why is I feel like most of the time they get it wrong. And I'm not confident that they're going to treat the historical material with respect. Right? And so one of the reasons why I did go down this road, and also the other reason is often this stuff makes me sad, right? So one of the reasons why I pushed through and I watched this material was it was one particular actor. His name is Aldous Hodge. He played a slave in this show by the name of Noah, and he was actually the main protagonist, right? And I'm familiar with Aldous Hodge from a show called Leverage. So Leverage is a fantastic show. So everybody out there has seen a heist movie. You've seen one heist movie or another. Heist movies usually have, Robert De Niro or Gene Hackman, right? Those guys, they've been a lot of, actually, heist movies are rare, more and more rare, which I guess the reason why is heists are becoming more rare themselves, because I think a lot of theft is moving on to online, and that is not good drama. It's not good movies. It's not good television. It plagues many, many, many television shows today because it's so hard to make anything dramatic about, something being stolen on the internet, right? So Leverage is a fantastic show, and I do want to talk about this for a little while because it's why I watched Underground, right? Aldous Hodge played a slave, a runaway slave, and actually a runaway slave instigator, instigating multiple people on his plantation to run away. He was a leader. He was a runaway slave. He is an instigator, right? Aldous Hodge. He played this slave named Noah on the show. Aldous Hodge did this role just amazingly, right? He did such a good job. His acting is, peerless. As far as anything I've ever seen historically on television. He is just a phenomenal actor. Really, really good. Now, what's really interesting is I watched like 4 seasons of him on a show called Leverage, which very few people watched. It was a heist show, and on that show, Aldous Hodge played a hacker. So he played this super, super smart, very funny hacker, and he did a great job with that role as well. And so, he's one of my favorite actors. I don't think he really has a lot. Actually, one of the things I think is really frustrating is I really do think, there's definitely today there are many areas. I definitely think we have made massive progress on racial equality. I mean, we have a black president. I voted for him twice. And that you can't, that's huge. That is just a huge form of racial progress in America, right? But there are definitely racial inequalities in America, and one of them is Aldous Hodge. While I really enjoyed him on this show, it's racial inequality that he is not a movie actor. Like he is. It's very clear to me that he takes the craft extremely seriously, and he has that unique ability to be funny and then also to deliver very serious content. And he has a presence on television that to me doesn't belong on television. He really should be a film actor. So I think that's frustrating. Although I really did enjoy him in this show, and I think he really made this show fantastic. And he was definitely the best thing about this show. So if you want to see a fantastic, a great actor doing a great written part and really, putting themselves into the role, physically and emotionally, and seeing an actor performing at the top of his craft, you want to see Underground, because that's exactly what Aldous Hodge does in this. He is fantastic in this. And so, there's some actors that I'm a really big fan of. Ed Norton, I know he's struggled with film picks in the last few years, but I think he's a great actor. And there are particular actors who, if they're in something, I'm going to see it generally, almost without exception. So, and Aldous Hodge is becoming that kind of actor. So, and I'm definitely going to be looking for his stuff going forward. Can't say enough about him in this particular project. Really, really good. All right, so Noah. So let's. Oh, by the way, spoilers all over this, like all my content. Spoilers. All right. So we'll go forward from there. All right. There is another slave in here. So this is about the Macon 7, which is 7, and I believe a lot of this was historical, or it was here's a historical event with the names filed off. So the Macon 7 are these 7 slaves who run from the Macon plantation. And so the 7 slaves are Noah, I'm going to talk about them as much as I can, are Noah and Rosalie. So I talked about Noah, and, he's the instigator. He's the one that says, we got to get out of here, right? Rosalie is a house slave, is a slave who serves in the house. And she is light-skinned. They actually refer to her in the film as a mulatto. And so she is, she's really different than Noah, because Noah is a slave who works in the cotton fields and just is treated absolutely brutally. He's been whipped so many times that, he's built calluses to the whip on his back, and then, Rosalie is the exact opposite. She is, I think, she's whipped in the show, like once, but it's like the first time she's ever whipped, and she's like pristine, like she's untouched, in this show, which for slaves is really, really unusual, right? So one of the things, just talking about Noah and Rosalie, one of the reasons why I did think Underground, it's a great point. Like, did I enjoy Underground? That's another reason why I don't watch historical properties much. I don't think I enjoyed watching Underground. It was difficult to watch Underground because I really felt it did an excellent job of showing what slavery in America was like. And that's one of the reasons why I watched it. It was 10 episodes. That's 10 hours of my life, right? So I watched it because I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget what happened in this country. I don't want to forget that many of the people who live here are still impacted by that history, right? And the reason why is I want to have compassion for them. As an evangelical Christian, I think it's important for us to not be ignorant of the suffering that happens in this world. And this show truly, I really feel, allowed me to see slavery even more clearly than I have in the past. So my knowledge of slavery came from what I learned in elementary school, junior high, high school, and then also in my degree, my political science bachelor's of art degree, and then also in my MBA, master's of business administration technology management that I earned. We did actually, when we would learn about economics, we would talk about slavery. So I've had, literally 12, 16, 20 years of education that has talked about, during my life, that has talked about slavery, right? But one of the things that Underground did that, talking about it in a class and reading about it in a book didn't do was they showed people get whipped in this, and it was brutal. Like, you could just see them, how the lashes would come down on them, and it would just literally tear a rent in their back. And it was horrible, and they would just bleed, and it was horrible. And so, I never saw that. I mean, I read about it, but, I've never seen someone be whipped. And they showed that graphically in the show. And it was sad. It made me deeply sad. But this was well crafted, and I think they did a good job, and I do think it is helpful for people to be able to see what these historical events really look like. And this is a Hollywood production. I consider the vast majority of television to be extensions of Hollywood. It is a Hollywood production. I know it's not 100% accurate, but I definitely think, I know it didn't show this historical event as it was, but I do think it showed it as it may have been, and it definitely showed aspects of slavery that 100% absolutely happened, So, and whipping people, it deeply saddens me to think that, people in America were whipped for 100 years or more. And it's just barbaric, and we need to never forget, ever, And one of the reasons why I feel that's important, and that we should, take in this kind of content is, we can't forget, and one of the reasons why I say that is the Holocaust deniers. There are people who deny the Holocaust today, and they are rising in Europe, right? And that's ludicrous, right? And so we need to keep it in front of people that these horrible things happened in our nation. And one of the things that's interesting too is I have certain subjects that I'm absolutely fascinated by that I never stop learning about. They're just weird topics, right? So I'll give you a few of them. The Masons, I'm always reading and learning more about the Masons. The Mormons, I'm always reading and learning more about the Mormons. And reparations, I'm fascinated by reparations, the idea of reparations, and whether it will ever occur, right? And so slavery is deeply connected to the subject of reparations, right? And so this show really clicked on a lot of bases with me, just kind of determining how, just trying to learn more about things that I'm interested in, right? So that was just two slaves. That's Noah and Rosalie. There was another slave named Cato, and Cato was the master's. Tom Macon was the master of the plantation. And Cato was the master's, bull. He was the guy that drove the slaves who was a slave, right? So he was like a slave foreman. They actually had a foreman, but who was a regular white guy, terrible person and a horrible character, and he dies a horrendous death in the show. Just right? Rosalie stabs him in the neck with a bottle, right? And I couldn't believe. Now I'll just warn anybody out there. There is insanely graphic violence in this show, and like when she stabs him in the neck with a bottle, they do not cut away. Like, they just linger on this white foreman on the ground, bleeding out with a bottle in his neck. I mean, it was just, ooh, man, it really, it got me. So anyway, so basically, so Cato was the black foreman, and wow, this guy was an incredibly complex character. one, I think there's a question here. So I think this dude was evil, right? He was just evil. So one of the things he did was, he was always kind of reporting to the master on the other slaves. There's a point where when Rosalie kills the foreman, the master actually makes him the foreman. And he serves as the foreman briefly, right? When he finds out that when Cato, the black foreman, finds out that that's another thing that's really interesting. So let me go through. Sorry, got a little distracted there. So when Cato finds out that Noah is going to run, he threatens Noah and says, "Hey, you have to let me come along on this trip," right? And kind of is pretty interesting, and Noah does not want to let him come on. None of the slaves want to let this guy go on the trip with them, but he's so smart and so dangerous. Reminds me a lot about Trump. I think that's another guy who's incredibly smart and incredibly dangerous. So basically he forces them to take him along, right? And sure enough, he actually shoots one of the slaves while they're running, right? One of the 7, he shoots one of the slaves just to give a slowed down target to some bounty hunters, to some slave catchers, so that he can get away. He's just a vicious, horrible, villain in this show. Now I'm only talking about the slaves right now. I haven't even talked about Tom Macon. The plantation owner and his wife are the super villains of this show. Like that, they are the worst, right? And so I didn't want to, so I'm just talking about this one, but this guy Cato, bad dude. But one of the things I thought was interesting was it did add to the complexity of the show, right? There was another of the 7 slaves. There was a slave called Henry, and Henry was like a 14, 15-year-old boy who ran with them. And he is running because he is inspired by Noah. So he sees Noah as a role model. He sees Noah's strength. He sees Noah's resilience. He sees Noah's craftiness, right? Noah had to be, smart and wily and strong and resilient in order to do the horrible work that these plantation owners demanded, and then also to plan all this running away. It was incredible. Like, it showed how hard these slaves had to work in order to even try to escape, and how many pitfalls there were. So Noah is like, he's like almost like a superhero in this show, the way they show him. And there are just so many times where even the poses they put him into were almost super heroic, which I think is great because, I think there absolutely were slaves who, went above and beyond nobility. I think that's the best way to put it. And I think it's great that they got Aldous Hodge to play this character Noah. And he's just really, really fascinating. So Henry comes along on this trip so that he can be, so that he can be free, and because he's inspired by Noah, right? Very interesting. Another one of the Macon 7 who runs is Moses. And Moses is a pastor. Oh, what a fantastic character. He was really fascinating. So he is a black preacher, and he preaches God's word, the Holy Bible, to the slaves, right? But he can't read, right? So it's just fascinating. So how does he do his job as a preacher if he can't read the Bible? Well, his wife can read the Bible, right? And Moses' wife is named Pearly May. And Pearly May was an awesome character as well. And they have a little girl named Boo. And it was beautiful. It was like this picture of a family, and it almost makes me want to cry just thinking about these three. Because, Pearly May, as they are escaping, the slave catchers are right on them. Moses is carrying their little girl Boo. And Pearly May has to jump in front of the slave catchers and stop them literally with her body, and slowed them down and gave up her shot at freedom and gave up, you know, going back to, you know, to slavery, knowing she was going to face horrible punishment. And just so sad. This is a fantastic show, and I just talked about Slave. I didn't even go beyond those characters. Underground, pretty amazing show. Aldous Hodge, amazing actor. Take care, everybody.